The Galactic Council ship hovered above Earth, silent and watchful. Senior researcher Taiho stood at the main observation window, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he studied the blue planet below. The humans had no idea they were being watched. The Council had been monitoring Earth for decades, cataloging human behavior and determining if they were ready for first contact. "Sir, you need to see this," called Assistant Nari, her voice urgent. "The humans are responding to an emergency." Taiho moved to the monitoring station. On the screen, a small asteroid had struck the Pacific Ocean near a populated island. Instead of chaos, the humans were organizing with remarkable speed. "How long since impact?" Taiho asked. 17 minutes, Nari replied. Taiho's inner eyelids flickered with surprise. Already the humans had rescue vessels in the water, aircraft in the sky, and emergency teams coordinating responses. There was no committee meeting, no consensus, building, just immediate action. "But who authorized their response?" he asked, puzzled. "I see no evidence of proper deliberation protocols." Nari manipulated the controls, zooming in on what appeared to be a command center. "It seems their leaders simply gave orders, and the others followed." This was deeply unsettling to Taiho. In Galactic Council society, every action required thorough discussion, careful consideration of all viewpoints, and proper consensus building. Even minor decisions typically required hours of deliberation. Major ones could take weeks. "Record everything," Taiho directed. "The Council must see this behavior." 3 days later, the Council made their decision. First contact would proceed. The humans had developed faster-than-light communication capability, which met the technical threshold for contact. But Taiho worried about their impulsive nature. The human delegation arrived on a small shuttle. Captain Sunho led 5 others, scientists and diplomats chosen by Earth's united governments. They seemed calm, but their eyes revealed their excitement as they walked into the reception chamber. "Welcome to the Galactic Council observation vessel," Taiho said through the translation device. "We are pleased to establish formal relations with Earth." Captain Sunho bowed slightly. "We are honored to represent humanity in this historic moment." The meeting proceeded according to carefully established protocols. Taiho was impressed by how well the humans were following the formalities, though they seemed impatient with the ceremonial aspects. Then, without warning, the ship's oxygen filtration system malfunctioned in the meeting room. Warning lights flashed. For Council members, this was cause for immediate committee formation to assess the situation and determine proper response protocols. Before Taiho could even announce the formation of an emergency assessment panel, 3 humans had already jumped into action. The engineer, Gina, moved directly to the wall panel and began examining the system. The security officer, Doyun, was already helping one of the older Council members who was having breathing difficulties. Captain Sunho was coordinating their efforts with calm, direct commands. "Gina, status report," Sunho called. "Oxygen recycler is offline. Backup systems aren't engaging," Gina replied, her fingers moving quickly over the alien technology. "I think I can bypass the main control circuit." "Do it," Sunho ordered without hesitation. Taiho and the other Council members watched in stunned silence. No discussion, no debate about the proper approach. Just immediate action based on minimal information. Within 3 minutes, Gina had the system working again. The room's air quality immediately improved. "How did you know what to do?" Taiho asked, later, when they had moved to the dining area for the ceremonial meal. "You had no time to properly consider all options." Captain Sunho looked confused. "Someone needed to fix it, so we fixed it. But there was no consensus process. Council," Member Hana said, "no proper deliberation." "With respect," Gina the engineer said, "deliberation would have left us all struggling to breathe." The Council members exchanged troubled glances. This human tendency to act without questioning was both impressive and deeply concerning. Later, as the human delegation toured the ship, Taiho spoke privately with the Council Elder Wujin. "They act without proper process," Taiho said. "It's dangerous." "Or efficient," Wujin replied thoughtfully. "Did you notice how they respond to their leaders?" When their captain speaks, they move immediately. Is that admirable or terrifying? Taiho wondered. The first contact dinner was interrupted when an alert came through about a solar flare threatening the ship's shields. The council members immediately formed a discussion circle to analyze the threat level and determine appropriate responses. Meanwhile, Captain Sunho and his team were already reviewing the ship's systems, suggesting immediate shield adjustments. We need to rotate the deflector array, Gina called out. Do it, Sunho ordered. Before the council had even finished their preliminary discussion, the humans had implemented 3 system adjustments that strengthened the shields. Taiho watched them with growing wonder and concern. These humans might be the most fascinating and disruptive species the council had ever encountered. They simply didn't question before acting, and somehow it worked. Taiho stood nervously at the airlock, waiting to board the human vessel, Dauntless. The Galactic Council had approved his request to study human decision-making patterns up close. He still couldn't believe they acted so quickly without proper discussion. The airlock hissed open. Captain Yunji greeted him with a firm handshake. Taiho's 3 fingers wrapped awkwardly around her 5. Welcome aboard, researcher Taiho. I hope your stay will be educational, she said. Taiho bowed slightly. Thank you for allowing this mission. I am eager to understand human command structures. A young officer named Junho showed Taiho to his quarters. The room was small but functional, clearly designed for human proportions. Taiho had to duck to enter the doorway. The captain has granted you full access to observe daily operations, Junho explained. Just try not to get in the way during emergencies. How will I know when there is an emergency? Taiho asked. Junho smiled. Trust me, you'll know. Over the next few days, Taiho followed the crew, recording everything in his datapad. The ship operated with remarkable efficiency. Orders flowed from Captain Yunji to department heads, then to crew members. Everyone seemed to know their role without constant discussion. During a routine meeting, Taiho finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Captain, how do you ensure the best decision is made when you don't consult everyone, Din? Yunji considered the question. We don't have time to reach perfect consensus on every matter. I trust my officers' expertise in their areas. They trust me to make final decisions. But what if you're wrong? Taiho pressed. Then I'm wrong, she said simply. We adjust and move forward. Perfect planning doesn't survive contact with reality. This concept troubled Taiho deeply. In council culture, being wrong was shameful. Decisions required unanimous agreement precisely to avoid individual blame. On the 7th day, the real test came. Taiho was observing bridge operations when an emergency signal flashed on the communications panel. Captain, distress call from Mining Outpost 6, reported Communications Officer Mina. Tunnel collapse, at least 20 miners trapped. Captain Yunji didn't hesitate. Helm, set course immediately. Medical, prepare trauma teams. Engineering, ready the drilling equipment. The bridge erupted into activity. No one questioned the orders. No one suggested forming a committee to evaluate options. Taiho stepped forward. Captain, shouldn't we first determine if this is the closest ship? Perhaps analyze the tunnel structural data before selecting equipment? The captain glanced at him while continuing to issue orders. People are trapped. Every minute matters. We can analyze while moving. Taiho made careful notes as the ship changed course. The humans prepared rescue operations during transit. Medical Officer Jiwoo organized supplies while reviewing miner health records. Engineering Chief Q tested drilling equipment while studying outpost schematics. How can they plan and act simultaneously? Taiho wondered in his personal log. Council species separate these phases completely. When they reached the mining outpost, the situation was worse than reported. Toxic gas filled the lower tunnels. Safety systems had failed. Standard equipment won't work, Chief Q reported. Gas levels are too high. Captain Yunji turned to her science officer. Seojun, options? Officer Seojun thought for only seconds. We could modify the atmospheric filters from Shuttle 2, create makeshift breathing apparatus. Do it, the captain ordered. Taiho watched in amazement as crew members dismantled shuttle equipment without debate. Within 20 minutes, they had created breathing devices never designed by the original manufacturers. "This seems dangerous," Taiho commented to Medical Officer Jiwoo. "They're using equipment in ways not intended." "Sometimes you work with what you have," she replied while packing emergency supplies. "Innovation often comes from necessity." 4 hours later, Taiho stood in the medical bay watching miners being treated. 16 lives saved, 4 lost. The rescue team had reached them just as oxygen levels became critical. That night, Taiho found Captain Yoonji alone in the observation lounge, staring at the stars. "Your crew performed remarkably today," he said. She nodded, looking tired. "They always do." "The council would have formed multiple committees," Taiho admitted. "By the time we reached consensus on the proper approach, all 20 miners would likely have died. And yet your careful planning prevents many disasters from happening in the first place," she noted. "Both approaches have value." Taiho considered this. "How do you handle the burden of making life or death decisions without consensus?" Captain Yoonji was quiet for a moment. "It's not easy. Those 4 miners we couldn't save. I'll remember their names forever. But hesitation would have cost 16 more lives." Taiho made a final note in his datapad before turning it off. The human capacity for decisive action had both strengths and costs. Perhaps most interesting was their ability to live with those costs, to make peace with imperfect decisions in an imperfect universe. "Remarkable," he whispered to himself as Captain Yoonji gazed silently at the stars, carrying the weight of command alone. The space station Harmony hung in orbit around the neutral planet Nexus, its gleaming metal arms rotating slowly to create artificial gravity. Built as a joint project between humans and the Galactic Council, it symbolized cooperation between the species. Today, that cooperation would face its greatest test. Taiho had been transferred to the station to continue his research on human behavior. He stood in the main observation deck watching ships dock and depart when the first warning lights began to flash. Station Administrator Jinky's voice came over the communication system. "Attention all personnel. We have detected an issue with the main coolant system. Please remain calm while we assess the situation." Engineer Minsu rushed past Taiho toward the control room. Taiho followed, curious about how the emergency would be handled. In the control center, screens showed a critical failure in the primary cooling system. Without cooling, the station's fusion reactor would overheat and potentially melt down. "The pressure valve in Section 12 has ruptured," reported Technician Yoonju. "Coolant is leaking into the maintenance tunnels." Administrator Jinky nodded gravely. "We must establish proper protocols for this emergency. I propose we form 3 assessment teams to evaluate our options." Human Lieutenant Sung-ho stepped forward. "With respect, Administrator, we don't have time for assessment teams. That reactor will reach critical temperatures in less than 2 hours. 2 hours is sufficient time to properly analyze all variables," Council Member Daehyun countered. "Hasty action could worsen the situation." The room divided quickly. Council staff began organizing into discussion groups while the human crew members exchanged worried glances. Lieutenant Sung-ho turned to Chief Engineer Minsu. "How long would it take to reach the damaged valve?" 20 minutes through the maintenance tunnels," Minsu replied, "but radiation levels are already climbing. Anyone going in would need protection." Sung-ho nodded. "Get the radiation suits. I'll assemble a repair team." Administrator Jinky looked up from his committee assignments. "Lieutenant, I haven't authorized any repair attempt yet. We must follow proper emergency procedures." "With respect, sir, I'm implementing Earth Alliance Emergency Protocol 17, Sung-ho replied. "It authorizes immediate action in situations threatening station integrity." Before Jinky could protest further, Sung-ho and 3 human crew members left the control room. Taiho followed them, recording everything on his datapad. In the equipment bay, the humans quickly donned radiation suits. Engineer Minsu checked each suit carefully. "The radiation will still get through these suits eventually," she warned. "You'll have maybe 40 minutes before you reach dangerous exposure levels." Sung-ho nodded. "Then we work fast." Taiho stepped forward. "This action violates council protocols. Administrator Jinky has not approved this mission." Sung-ho paused while putting on his helmet. Researcher Taiho, I respect the Council's methods, but sometimes waiting means death. If that reactor overheats, everyone on this station will die. But proper process ensures the best outcome, Taiho insisted. Not always, Engineer Min-soo said, softly. Sometimes speed is more important than perfection. The repair team entered the maintenance tunnels while Taiho returned to the control center. There, he found two distinct scenes unfolding. Council staff were deeply engaged in theoretical discussions about optimal repair approaches. Human staff were monitoring the repair team's progress through the station's systems. They've reached Section 10, reported Communications Officer Hana. Radiation levels are rising faster than expected. On the video feed, Taiho could see the human team moving through steam-filled corridors. Their radiation meters blinked faster as they approached the damaged valve. Meanwhile, Administrator Jinky's assessment committee was still debating which repair tools would be theoretically optimal. Lieutenant Sung-ho reports they've reached the damage section, Hana announced. Beginning repair now. The video showed the team working quickly despite their bulky radiation suits. Engineer Min-soo directed the repairs while Sung-ho held a damaged panel in place. The other two team members connected emergency coolant lines. Radiation exposure reaching dangerous levels, Hana reported, her voice tight with worry. Administrator, Jinky looked up from his committee. Tell them to withdraw immediately. We haven't approved this risk level. Too late, Hana replied. They've almost completed the repair. On screen, Engineer Min-soo made a final connection. The coolant pressure readings began to stabilize. The team started their retreat, moving more slowly now. 1 hour later, Taiho stood in the medical bay watching Dr. Yuna treat the repair team for radiation exposure. All 4 humans would recover, though they would need treatment for several days. You took an enormous risk, Taiho said to Sung-ho, who lay on a treatment bed. We had no choice, Sung-ho replied weakly. By the time your committee's finished talking, we'd all be dead. Administrator Jinky entered the medical bay. He looked troubled. I've reviewed the station logs, he said. Your actions violated at least 7 council protocols. Sung-ho started to speak, but Jinky raised his hand. However, the administrator continued, our best analysis shows the reactor would have reached critical failure before our assessment was complete. Your actions, while improper, saved the station. Engineer Min-soo smiled despite her pain. Maybe next time we can find a middle path, some way to combine quick action with careful planning. Taiho made notes on his datapad. Perhaps there was wisdom in both approaches after all. Taiho sat alone in his research chamber aboard the Harmony station, surrounded by data screens. For weeks since the cooling system crisis, he had been expanding his research beyond simple observation. Now he studied human history, evolution, and psychology, seeking to understand the roots of their strange behavior. The door chimed softly. Enter, Taiho called. Captain Mina walked in, her arm still showing healing burns from the radiation exposure during the emergency repair. The council said you wanted to see me. Taiho gestured to an empty chair. Yes, thank you for coming. I have questions about human decision-making that may seem personal. Mina sat down carefully, favoring her injured arm. Ask away. That's why you're here, right? To understand us? In your emergency response training, how are you taught to handle fear? Taiho asked. Mina looked surprised. Interesting first question. We're taught to acknowledge fear but act anyway. Fear is natural, but it can't stop action when others depend on you. Taiho made notes on his datapad. In council culture, we view extended deliberation as the proper response to fear. We believe careful thought eliminates emotional decision errors. But sometimes there isn't time to think, Mina pointed out. Yes, Taiho said slowly. That is what I'm beginning to understand. He turned one of his screens toward her. It showed ancient humans on the plains of Africa facing predators. I believe I've found the evolutionary source of human decisiveness, he explained. Your species evolved in extremely dangerous environments. Those who hesitated were killed. Mina leaned forward to study the images. Our ancestors faced constant threats, predators, Natural disasters, rival groups. Quick decisions meant survival. Exactly, Tejo said with growing excitement. While council species evolved on safer worlds where careful deliberation was possible, neither approach is wrong. They're adaptations to different environments. Over the next week, Tejo presented his findings to the Galactic Council leadership. His research chamber was filled with the most senior council members, their multicolored robes creating a rainbow of authority. Humans evolved as prey animals, he explained, showing evolutionary charts. Their planet's environmental instability selected for decisive action over contemplation. Those who acted quickly survived. Those who deliberated too long did not pass on their genes. Elder Youngsu's face tentacles rippled with concern. Then they are dangerous by nature. Impulsive creatures cannot be trusted with advanced technology. That conclusion is too simple, Tejo countered respectfully. Their history contains terrible examples of action without ethics, wars, genocides, environmental destruction. But the same trait produced their greatest achievements. He displayed images of human emergency workers saving others during disasters, medical breakthroughs made under pressure, and exploration missions that required bold decisions. Their impulsivity has costs, Tejo continued, but also benefits we lack. While we were still deliberating about the reactor failure, they had already implemented repairs. The council members murmured among themselves, processing this information. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Human Ambassador Jiyu was meeting with Council Coordinator Tae Woo. She had been studying council decision-making processes with the same curiosity that Tejo showed toward humans. Your 15-step consensus method prevented a war with the cluster worlds last cycle, Jiyu acknowledged. Our approach might have escalated to conflict. Tae Woo's eye membranes flickered in agreement. The council has maintained peace among 300 species for millennia through careful deliberation. But you nearly lost this station because of that same caution, Jiyu noted. There is truth in your words, Tae Woo admitted. Perhaps extreme positions on either side create vulnerability. Later that evening, Tejo and Ambassador Jiyu met in the station's garden dome. Plants from a dozen worlds created a peaceful setting for their conversation. My research is nearly complete, Tejo said, watching artificial rainwater the alien plants. I think I understand now why humans act without questioning. And? Jiyu prompted. It's not simple impulsivity, Tejo explained. It's a different form of intelligence, one evolved for rapid response in dangerous conditions. You trust action and adjust course as needed. We trust planning and try to avoid adjustment entirely. Jiyu nodded. Both approaches have value in different situations. That's my conclusion as well, Tejo agreed. The question now is whether our species can learn from each other. He showed her his final research recommendation, a proposal for a joint Human Council crisis response team that would combine immediate action with careful planning. Do you think the council will approve this? Jiyu asked. They will discuss it thoroughly, Tejo said with a small smile. Very thoroughly. Jiyu laughed. And humans will want to implement it immediately. Perhaps, Tejo suggested. The implementation timeline itself should be our first joint decision, a middle path between your speed and our caution. As they looked out over the garden, a small earth plant was blooming next to an ancient council world tree. Different species, different growth, patterns yet sharing the same soil. Perhaps there was hope for true cooperation after all. The Joint Response Unit office aboard the Harmony Station hummed with activity. 6 months had passed since Tejo's research led to the formation of this experimental team, combining human decisiveness with council deliberation. Commander Junho stood at the central table alongside Council Coordinator Seo Hyun, reviewing the latest training results. The response time has improved by 30%, Junho noted, pointing to the data. And the error rate has dropped as, well. Seo Hyun's eye membranes flickered with satisfaction. The council leadership is impressed. They had doubts this merger of approaches would function effectively. The office door slid open, and Tejo entered. His research position had been upgraded after his groundbreaking work on human decision-making patterns. Senior researcher, Junho greeted him. Here to check on your experiment? It's not just an experiment anymore, Taiho replied. The Joint Response Unit has become a model for other cooperation efforts. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert. The station's communication system activated automatically. Emergency signal detected from Outpost 73 in the Cygnus sector, announced the AI system. Stellar flare activity threatening colonized moons. Estimated impact in 6 hours. The response team immediately moved to their stations. 4 humans and 4 council members working in carefully matched pairs. Activate emergency protocols, Junho ordered. Communications, alert all ships in the sector. While the human team members began immediate action, the council members started their rapid assessment process, a streamlined version of their traditional approach. We need evacuation transports, said Seo-hyun. The outpost has limited shielding. Dispatching immediately, agreed Junho. But we should also consider strengthening their existing shields. This balanced approach, immediate action coupled with deeper analysis, represented everything the Joint Response Unit stood for. Humans had learned to pause for quick assessment. Council members had learned to act before analysis was complete. In the communication center, Human Officer Eunha worked alongside Council Technician Do-hyun. They were coordinating the evacuation ships while simultaneously analyzing the stellar flare patterns. The secondary moons will be hit first, Eunha noted. We should prioritize those evacuations. Agreed, said Do-hyun, already calculating optimal evacuation routes. But historical data suggests the flare might create electromagnetic disruptions in these sectors. We should route ships through this alternate path. Eunha nodded. Good thinking. Acting fast means nothing if we send people into new danger. In the engineering section, Council Engineer Min Sung and Human Specialist Ji Won were developing shield reinforcement plans for the outpost. If we modify the shield harmonics, we can increase protection by 23%, Min Sung explained. That might not be enough, Ji Won replied. But what if we redirect power from the mining operations? The equipment can be replaced. Lives cannot. Min Sung considered this for only moments, a remarkably short deliberation by council standards. An unorthodox solution, but effective. Let's implement both approaches. 4 hours later, the evacuation was well underway. The Joint Response Unit had mobilized 3 transport ships and reinforced the outpost shields. The stellar flare was growing stronger than initially predicted, but their combined approach was working. Taiho watched from the command center, taking notes on his datapad. His research would help refine future cooperation protocols. We're still missing something, Commander Junho said suddenly, studying the stellar data. These readings don't match historical patterns. Council Coordinator Seo-hyun moved to his side. You're right. The magnetic field is collapsing much faster than standard models predict. We need to speed up the evacuation, Junho decided. And recalculate safe distances, Seo-hyun added. Instead of arguing about priorities, they each turned to their strengths. Junho immediately contacted the transport ships with new urgency, while Seo-hyun began detailed calculations of the advancing solar storm. When the stellar flare finally hit, it was twice as powerful as initially predicted, but the last transport ship was already clearing the danger zone, carrying the final evacuees to safety. The outpost shields held just long enough to protect the essential infrastructure. Later, as the team gathered to review their performance, Taiho presented his observations. What we witnessed today was not just cooperation but true synthesis, he explained. Not humans acting like council members or council members acting like humans, but something new, a blended approach that takes the best of both. Commander. Junho nodded. The humans would have evacuated quickly but might have missed the changing magnetic patterns. And the council would have predicted the magnetic shift but might have started evacuation too late, added Seo-hyun. Taiho activated a holographic display showing the successful evacuation alongside data from previous disasters where either humans or council species had acted alone. The numbers speak clearly, he said. Together we saved more lives than either approach would have managed alone. That evening, as the station rotated to begin its night cycle, Tai-Ho stood at the observation window looking at the stars. Behind him, human and council crew members shared a meal, exchanging stories and ideas. Perhaps, he thought, this is how evolution should work, not through competition and survival of the fittest, but through cooperation and the sharing of strengths.